The original Romancing Saga 2 released back in 1993 on the Super Famicom and was actually the 5th game in the SaGa series. It was developed by Square and has seen Western releases since. There was a remaster for iOS devices, and that version has since released on the Vita, the Switch, the PlayStation 4, Windows and the Xbox One. Now, much like Trials of Mana, Square Enix have remade the game for a new audience, and it's about to release on the Nintendo Switch. Is it a saga to savour, or will it leave you all romanced out? Well, thank you to Square Enix for the review code, and now let's find out. In terms of the story, this new remake with the tagline Revenge of the Seven tells the tale of 7 heroes who fought to save mankind. However, their power was feared by the fellow ancients who banished them to another dimension, with their deeds living on as a legend that passed down through the ages, foretelling how the heroes would return when the world needed them most. Well, the heroes have returned, however their long exile has corrupted their forms, and they now seek vengeance on those who wronged them. You take on the role of the Emperor of Avalon, looking to stop the 7 heroes and save the world. It's a fight for the ages, and you will pass your lineage on to a number of successors as the story goes on through time. It's a clever concept and it plays nicely into the gameplay, as we'll see soon. The whole story is initially told as a bard's tale, as patrons in a tavern gather round to hear the story. Whilst the story itself isn't groundbreaking, it at least did away with the age-old storytelling device from back then of trying to find X amount of MacGuffins to move the story forward, and the execution of the story in particular is very strong. So let's move on to gameplay now, and it's not a stretch to say that this game has some of the most clever mechanics I've seen in an RPG for quite a while, all the more ironic because this game in its original form is over 30 years old. Let's start with the basics then. As I mentioned, you are the Emperor of Avalon and the Kingdom of Avalon is your hub area. Here you'll find a number of different places, shops, blacksmiths, a tavern, etc. And when it comes time to go out on a mission to stop one of the 7 or save the kingdom in some way, you will use your map to fast travel to this new location. Upon arriving, you will be put into an area where you'll use your map to navigate, making your way to the boss or the main waypoint, whatever it may be, and taking on that battle. On your way towards this, you will come across a number of encounters. They're not random in the traditional sense that they cannot be avoided. They are visible on the screen. However, avoiding them is quite difficult, as they will fly towards you when you are noticed. Your best bet is to try and creep up on them and initiate the attack yourself by pressing A, therefore starting the battle with an advantage. Let's look at the battles themselves then, because as I mentioned, I found them incredibly exhilarating with some really interesting mechanics. So you'll put together a team of characters to fight in these battles, and you do have a number of characters to choose from. You can change the lineup of your retinue at any time by visiting one of the aforementioned taverns. You can also set a formation as long as you have 5 characters, and the formation that you hold will grant certain bonuses in battle. It will also determine how easily hit your characters are, so having your tank-like character at the front and your magic dealer at the back, say, is probably a good idea, with your main protagonist in the middle surrounded by the other characters. Each of your characters with a number of different weapons, and each character will have a proficiency with these weapons. But here's where one of the most interesting parts starts. You see, you don't gain levels for winning battles as you do in traditional RPG style. The SaGa series has been known for not giving you levels in such a way. What it does instead is it grants you technique points. Now these do work like levels for the most part, to be fair. After a few battles you will level up your health points and your battle points, effectively your magic points, the way that you use more powerful attacks. So you do get stronger as a character. However, rather than learn new moves, what will happen is any weapon that you use in a particular attack will level up your character's competence with that weapon to a small degree. Therefore, if you don't ever use a particular weapon or magic type, your character will never get any better with it. It encourages you to try and round out your character completely and not just spam one move all the time, and it means that even smaller battles that you've been drawn into when trying to get to the main boss, say, don't feel like a waste of time, because you can use these as chances to experiment with some of your lesser known weapons and gain levels on those as well. Gaining levels with these attacks will make them stronger, of course, and it means even if you've got a character that's strong with a sword, you might want to use their magic attack sometimes just to boost it. Or if your best archer is also the one with the healing spell, you may want to give another character a bow so you can cover this aspect whilst they're boosting that spell and using it to keep your party healthy and get themselves stronger in the meantime. It's a fantastic system. I've always loved this in the SaGa series, and seeing it here in this remake in all its glory will hopefully open it up to a new generation of players. You also have the Glimmer system, which again is a staple of the SaGa series, and this is basically how you learn or acquire new moves. Again, rather than gaining levels and just being given new moves a la Pokemon say, you instead have moments where your characters have a light bulb against an existing move, and using this move at that point may well lead to them almost having an epiphany and learning a new move, which will then become available to you on your moves list. Again, it encourages you to not just stick with the classic moves that you've learnt so well, as using one you don't know quite so well may result in you learning a new one. New to this remake of Romancing Saga 2 is the United Attack system, and this is basically a team move that you can perform once the bar at the bottom of the screen has filled. This will stack over the course of many battles, so you can go into a battle with it ready filled, and any actions taken out in a battle will lead to this starting to fill again. I also believe I'm right in saying that new for this remake is the timeline, which will show you whose move is next. Again, this is something that's been seen in games over the years, even back in the day, but I don't think it was in the original Romancing Saga 2. And finally, in terms of battle mechanics, you have life points. Now again, I'm relatively sure I'm right in saying that this actually was introduced in the SaGa series in Romancing Saga 2, and life points are different to your traditional health points. So health points will knock down as you fight. If you lose all of them, that character is incapacitated. So far, so standard. However, in this game, if you lose all of your health points, your character will also lose one of their life points, and they have very few of these, generally ranging from about 10 to 12. Now, whilst your character is incapacitated, if they are hit again, they will lose a further life point, so you need to resurrect them quickly to stop this from happening, as if they lose all of their life points, they will be out of the game. I think further games in the SaGa series refined this so that you could restore life points as you would any other points in taverns or by sleeping, that sort of thing. But in this particular game, they are much harder to acquire, and therefore the stakes seem much higher. I think this is a fantastic idea, and to be honest, I wished they'd have used that system moving forward through the SaGa series. I want to touch on the other main selling point of this game and its original, and that's the lineage system, or the series of successors to the throne that make up a key part of the story plus the gameplay. See, you are the ruler of Avalon, as I said, but you aren't one character the whole time. Rulers die, but the kingdom lives forever. Therefore, you need to choose your successor, and what will happen is that you will pass on some of your skills and knowledge to this character, making them stronger. It's a bit, I suppose, like the promotion system in something like Fire Emblem, where you will upgrade a character to a new class, albeit here you are losing a character in the process. And again, it's a fantastic way of storytelling, playing a major part in the game's mechanics, as well as forming an interesting narrative. There's so much more to talk about as well, and I'm not going to be able to cover all of it. One thing I will say is that there are times where you do feel completely powerless against certain enemies. There were a couple of boss fights where I got completely annihilated without feeling like there was a lot more I could have done in terms of leveling myself up or strengthening myself on the way to that particular moment. Now, I will say this isn't a complete negative, because I do love it when RPGs make you strategize as opposed to just encourage you to over level. And this is definitely the case here. But the problem with this is things such as swapping out party members isn't as easily accessible as it could have been. You need to go to a tavern, leaving a boss fight completely, having to then fight your way through all the enemies to get back to that point. This is a part I do feel could have been further modernised. There are also a few mechanics that I feel could have been explained a bit earlier. For example, there's a whole town building aspect where you can build a blacksmith, say, so you get stronger weapons, and it's accessible by sitting on the throne, or at a certain point in the story the game will tell you about it anyway. But I feel you could have been told about this earlier to better prepare yourself for some of the battles ahead. Moving on to the controls then, and for the most part they play out in a standard way. You use your left stick to move, right stick for the camera. Your L and R buttons in battle shift across from basic attacks to magic to items, that sort of thing, and pressing A will select the one you want. There were a couple of minor little quirks and strange choices, such as when you target a new enemy with one character, it will target the first or default enemy again with the next. Also, the X button is jump. Again, seems a bit of an odd choice. Could have used B, but it's not a major issue. They're small nitpicks, nothing more. Gameplay is quite simply fantastic. This is one of the most refreshing RPGs I've played in a while, and this is a great advert for why companies should bring back some of their older games in their back catalogue, especially someone like Square Enix, or now Square Enix as they are, considering how many they have, because some of the ideas used back then haven't been used that many times since, and a new audience is waiting for something fresh. A couple of aspects could have been further modernised, but on the whole, fantastic stuff. It gets 19 out of 20. Controls, as I mentioned, are absolutely fine, couple of minor little quirks, but nothing that's a big deal at all. They also get 19 out of 20. Moving on to the visuals now, and obviously this is a full remake. The original game back in '93 would have used sprites, pixel art and sprite work. The game has been remade from the ground up to now be in full 3D. The new character 3D models are based on the concept illustrations of Tomomi Kobayashi, the original artist, and I liked, as a nice little touch, they had the original character sprites in a walking animation whenever the game was loading. All towns and dungeons have been fully rendered, as you would expect, and there are some really interesting locations to visit. I do feel that the game has a strange washed out look at times. It doesn't look quite as colourful as you would expect, and there was an issue with assets loading in whenever a new screen, generally in cutscenes, made its appearance. This happening a couple of times wouldn't have been a big deal, but it does happen quite often and it can be quite distracting. I do like the character designs though, and I do feel each one has a unique look. I did start to really get invested in the characters, which was essential in a game about characters passing on their lineage, as you had an attachment to these characters as their time passed away. Performance wise, the game appears to be running at 30 frames per second, and there were a couple of minor frame drops here and there, but nothing major. For the most part, everything was stable in terms of how it ran. But I did experience one crash, which was very disappointing, and it actually came just after having quite a mammoth battle with a boss. Had it happened 5 minutes earlier, I'd have been crying into my tea. In terms of the music, the original score was composed by Kenji Ito, and he returns here to deliver a soundtrack of new arrangements based on that original music. You can toggle between these new variations and the original score in the options menu, and I must say the music is quite simply stunning. It has that classic Square feel to it. I think Kenji Ito worked on the Mana series, and you can definitely get that feeling in this game. It's bombastic, triumphant, melancholic, and serves as a fantastic backdrop to the action taking place on the screen. As well as this, you have full English and Japanese voice acting, obviously not included in the original, and I felt the voice acting was very strong. It made me care for the characters, as I've mentioned already, and gave life to the villains, who have that maniacal whimsy to them, a bit like someone like Skeletor. That's the sort of vibe I got from some of the villain characters. My only real criticism of the music were there were a couple of times where the music chosen didn't quite match what was happening. For example, there was a stealth section where it was telling me to creep in through a castle, yet the music was so loud and over the top, it really did distract from what was going on at that moment. These moments were few and far between, and for the most part the music was on point. Visuals are probably the weakest aspect of the game, but this is a very strong package, so even its weakest part is still pretty good. That crash was annoying though, and on the whole they get 15 out of 20. Audio was incredibly close to getting full marks, just a lack of variety at times or a couple of inappropriately sounding tunes to what was going on screen prevented this, but on the whole it gets 19 out of 20. Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven costs £49.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. Now, as I mentioned, this is an older game, some 30 odd years old, but this is a full remake. A lot of care and attention has been put into this game, and it showcases fantastic game mechanics that deserve to be given a new audience. Yes, a lot of these have been in Saga games since, and I've played a few of those and always enjoyed them, but this one for some reason just seems to pull it all together in a way that I don't feel any of those did. Not for my personal tastes anyway. It's a lengthy adventure and there are side quests to complete as well, and your choices in the game do affect the story at times. I should have said that at the beginning, but yeah, you'll have choices at certain moments which will alter the storyline to a degree. It's a very polished game with fantastic gameplay and definitely worthy of a new audience, and value gets 19 out of 20. To conclude, Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven is one of the most enjoyable RPG experiences I've had in quite a while. I put it up there with games like Bravely Default and Shin Megami Tensei 5 for games in the last say 10 to 15 years that have had a particular mechanic about them that have really hooked me, and then executed that mechanic very well. I had tried the original Romancing Saga 2 when it released in the West a few years ago, and I did struggle to get on board with it, and playing this remake makes me want to really try that original game again. Either they've done an exceptional job of updating everything that was in that game, or I just wasn't in the right frame of mind to play it at that time, but either way, this has given me the enthusiasm to try it again. I would highly recommend this game if you are an RPG fan. If you're a fan of the Saga series, it's a no-brainer. And if you love the original, well, get ready to love it all over again.
I can still do better.
Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven gets a SwitchUp score of 91%. Thank you everybody for watching this review, I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this game up, you can get your eShop cards over at our website switchup.gg, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cashback. There are other links down there to places like Nixie, Red Art Games and PlayAsia, and using the links and the discount codes shown will save you some money from there too. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.